So as you will no doubt know by now, the International Criminal Court has said that they are seeking an arrest warrant for Netanyahu for the crime of the Jewish people existing. That's what it basically comes down to. Because if we can't fight a war to get rid of those who seek to destroy us, the real genociders, then that's what it is. But what I want to talk to you about today is something very interesting, a report that came in the Telegraph today. And we touched on this in the video yesterday, but I want to dive into it in a bit more detail. These are 6 human rights lawyers that you see in this picture here. And they were members of the panel of experts appointed by the ICC. And they, all of them, have been critical of Israel in the past, and they have now triggered questions over the ICC's impartiality. Surprise, surprise. Well, I'm going to read to you a report in the Telegraph and see what it has to say about these 6 so-called experts. Have a listen. The International Criminal Court was founded on the notions of impartiality and independence. Karim Khan, who was the chief prosecutor, might therefore have been expected to move particularly cautiously in appointing a panel of experts as he weighed what action to take against Hamas and Israel over the October 7th attacks and Israel's retaliatory bombing of Gaza. His subsequent decision to pursue arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, as well as Hamas leaders, has proved explosive. The move has attracted a barrage of disapproval led by Joe Biden and pressing questions about the court's processes and future, triggered in part by concerns over whether the experts Khan called on were truly impartial. Those concerns may be given succor by the revelation that several members of the panel, which is populated by a gaggle of British human rights lawyers, including Amal Clooney, who you see in the top middle over there, they've publicly spoken out against Israel in the past. This, claim the court's critics, indicates a verdict-first way of working, or I call it in journalism destination journalism, where they already know the conclusion they want to come to. But in this case, yes, verdict first, in which at least some of those involved in the process were already convinced that Israel has been guilty of war crimes. Among those whose remarks have raised eyebrows is Baroness Helena Kennedy, KC, a founding member of Doughty Street Chambers, renowned for her expertise in criminal law. Within weeks of Hamas's murderous onslaught last October, Kennedy warned Israel was overstepping in its response, accusing it of breaching international law by cutting off critical water supplies to Gaza as part of its complete siege of the coastal enclave. Water is a basic human right, and its denial violates international law. It is a war crime, she told Prospect magazine on October 24th. Israel has a right to self-defense, but it has to be appropriate and in accordance with international law. Kennedy added, defending her stance as neither pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian, but instead pro-human rights. Shortly afterwards, another member of Khan's advisory panel spoke out against Israel's offensive and called for an immediate ceasefire. In an open letter published on November 18th, Danny Friedman KC accused the IDF of having run roughshod over the laws of war. Israel's response to the attack on its territory has involved catastrophic mass fatality and untold human suffering of Palestinians, not only as a result of aerial and ground bombardment, but through, among other features, cessation of basic sustenance and amenities, destruction of medical facilities, and forced movement of populations within the blockaded geography of the Gaza Strip, he said. There are also grave war crimes. They must be characterized as notwithstanding any continuing other crimes upon Israelis, foremost of which is the continuing and agonizing incommunicado detention of Israeli hostages. So who's on the International Criminal Court? We have Amal Clooney, who I said is in the top middle. The British barrister is a renowned human rights lawyer made famous by her marriage to actor George Clooney. Clooney's clients include Julian Assange, former Ukrainian Prime Minister, and the journalist Maria Ressa. Friedman of Matrix Chambers added, quote, I make the case for a ceasefire not because I'm against Israel. I am pro-Israel, but I'm pro-Palestine. The pair's remarks came months before the International Court of Justice ruled in January that there was not enough evidence to substantiate such weighty charges, stopping short of ordering Israel to halt its offensive but demanding its leaders act to prevent genocide unfolding in Gaza. While other members of Khan's panel, such as American-Israeli judge Theodore Meron, CMG, and Clooney have not been similarly outspoken on the war, the ICC's critics have highlighted their past positions on issues concerning Israel as problematic when considered against the court's clearly stated aim of impartiality. By the way, I suspect the reason why Clooney was so quiet until now is because she wanted to, as part of a ploy for her proposal to be seen as more legitimate by her being perceived as neutral, even though she clearly isn't. By the way, just to pause for a second, I've saw a story online that Amal Clooney, first of all, she was born in Beirut in Lebanon. Her uncle is Ziad Taqieddin, who is a Lebanese arms dealer and convicted felon who has supplied weapons to groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah. And of course, George Clooney is one of the main celebrity faces of the Biden campaign and will host a huge Biden fundraiser next month. And these are all just interesting points to know. Now, of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you're related to someone who's bad, you necessarily are as well. But information is information, and we should know these things. Meron, 94, has for years disputed the legality of Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. A Holocaust survivor, he was born in Poland before moving to what was then known as British Mandate Palestine, aged 15, in 1945. Some 20 years later, while serving as a legal advisor to the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1967, Meron counselled against allowing the construction of settlements in territories taken by Israel during the Six-Day War, and has remained publicly opposed to settlement building since. Clooney, meanwhile, is known to have, in 2014, turned down a UN offer to investigate possible war crimes by Israel in Gaza, saying she was too busy to take on the work. She did, however, issue a statement which appeared to prejudge the investigation by calling for accountability for crimes that have been committed. The incidents have led observers to question Khan's decision-making in calling on the experts he did. One senior international lawyer said, Khan said this was an impartial, independent and objective panel set up to review the evidence. So why did he include in the panel at least two people who had already expressed a clear view on the issue to which the evidence relates? Since when do independent and impartial experts assisting a judicial authority do their own comms with op-eds and press releases? Kennedy was giving interviews about Gaza while sitting on this panel. The problem is that campaigners are not the right people to do impartial, independent and objective reviews of potentially criminal evidence. Some of these people should have never been asked, and if asked, they should have declined. The whole thing is doing huge damage to the ICC. The Telegraph contacted the panel, which was supported by two academic advisors, but it refused to comment. However, in an op-ed published in the Financial Times on Monday, the panel's members, which also include Sir Adrian Fulford, PC, and a former ICC judge, and Elizabeth Wilmshurst, KC, who resigned from the Foreign Office on the eve of the 2003 invasion of Iraq, defended their credentials and findings. As lawyers specialised in international law hailing from diverse personal backgrounds, we felt we had a duty to accept the invitation to provide an impartial and independent legal opinion based on evidence, they said. We were selected because of our expertise in public international law, international human rights law, international humanitarian law, and international criminal law, and in the case of two of us, experience as former judges of international criminal tribunals, they added. Our common goal is advancing accountability, and we have reached our conclusions based on an assessment of the warrant applications against an objective legal standard. We have reached these conclusions unanimously, and we believe it is important to publish them, given the extent to which discourse has been politicised, disinformation has been rife, and international media has been denied access to the front lines. Khan himself said on Monday that he had applied for arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant for crimes including willful killing, extermination and/or murder, and starvation during the war in Gaza. He accused Israel of having committed crimes against humanity and said it had carried out a widespread and systematic attack against the Palestinian civilian population. Khan also said the leaders of Hamas, including Qatar-based Ismail Haniyeh and Sinwar, its Gaza chief, bear criminal responsibility for atrocities committed by the terror group during its deadly October 7th rampage, including the taking of hostages, rape and torture. International law and the laws of armed conflict apply to all, he said, adding no one can act with impunity. A panel of judges at the ICC now will consider whether to issue the arrest warrants he has requested. While the US and Israel are not signatories to the court's Rome Statute, many Western nations are. meaning the outcome could yet have profound implications for Netanyahu and Gallant by effectively rendering them unable to visit allies without risking arrest. The backlash from several such countries has been fierce, with Biden condemning Khan's moves as outrageous, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak branding it deeply unhelpful, and Germany's Foreign Ministry warning of a false impression of equivalence created by the simultaneous application for arrest warrants for Hamas leaders and Israeli officials. Let me be clear, whatever this prosecutor might imply, there is no equivalence, none, between Israel and Hamas. We will always stand with Israel against threats to its security, Biden said. Brett Schaffer, a senior research fellow in international regulatory affairs at the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation, said the furor was a sign of a failing court. Quote, the ICC seems to be better at making a splash than actually making demonstrable achievements, he told The Telegraph. For instance, it made a splash about announcing an arrest warrant against Putin, but Putin does not seem to be deterred. The court does not seem to be at all that instrumental or influential in dissuading countries like China from committing crimes against humanity, genocide or war crimes. And I think there is now ample reason to question whether the court is actually fit for purpose. It hasn't proven to be very effective, but it has been very expensive. It's now trying to justify its mandate and justify its existence. That's the end of the article. Quite frankly, if they think that this will justify their existence, well, all it's doing is proving their utter moral depravity. We're seeing clearly here that this is, to no one's real surprise, a total sham, a farce. It's a court that had decided what the verdict was going to be before it actually requested the arrest warrants for Netanyahu. And the thing I find most sick is twofold. Number one, there are so many more conflicts that have far, far higher death tolls, far, far higher civilian to combatant ratios. So much more actual oppression and even genocides that are going on. And yet, what do the ICC want to focus on? They want to focus on Israel. And number two, it's not just the double standards. It's the fact that Israel is doing the absolute basics of what she needs to do simply to survive and get rid of the threat. Can we get rid of Hamas? Yeah, you can get rid of Hamas, but don't hurt civilians. Fine. There's going to be some level of civilian casualty in war. Do you accept that? Sure, you have to. Okay, but it can't be this high. Well, what would you expect to be a decent civilian to terrorist ratio? Should it be at least the same as other wars? Yeah, it's got to be the same as other wars. Can't be higher than that. Well, guess what? It's been the lowest in the history of urban warfare. Basically 1-to-1 ratio. And for that, you're doing a war crime? When Israel allows in all these aid into Gaza every single day, which, by the way, I'm not so sure that I see why they should be doing that when it gets to Hamas. But Israel could not be doing any more to dance to the standards of Western secular war Geneva morality. It's all becoming so clear, isn't it? We're doing just the basic things to survive. And no, you're going to be arrested for that. You're guilty. You're a war criminal for just trying to survive. The whole thing is sick. These people should be ignored. We should not allow them to give us moral lectures. Instead, Israel should continue to come even more into her role as the real teachers of morality in the world. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.